My name is Lemuel R. Wimbish, Jr. I was born on October 30th, 1949. And the craziest thing about my birthday is I was born at 11:50. There's some confusion whether I was born on October the 30th or on Halloween, which was October the 31st. So everyone called me a Halloween baby. So I was the oldest at that time. At that particular time, I had younger brothers. One next to me was Jerome Wimbish. One next to him was Lamont Wimbish. So there were three of us. And it was three of us until the age of 5. My dad married his first wife, and we were the kids of his first wife. So there were three of us. My mom's name was Wilma Qualls, and they lived in a part of Richmond called Church Hill. At the age of 5, which we were still very young, we didn't know why we were making the transition to another family, but my dad had remarried to Geraldine McGriff. Geraldine was from South Carolina, and she was very, very good. So that was my stepmom. So that was my parents. My grandparents lived a few blocks. When I was first born, we lived in an old raggedy house because that's all we could afford. My grandfather died at a funeral. He was at his sister's funeral when we were very young, and he passed away. So we never got a chance to meet my grandfather for a long period of time. But my grandma, she lived a while, and so she would raise us and help us while our parents were going to work. So that really was the anchor of our family, because we were all so close. But then my dad married again, and I had two other siblings. I had a younger brother. His name was Andre Wimbish, and I had a sister, and her name was Don Wimbish. They have both passed down, but that was how we became such a family, and a very, very close family. So it was great growing up in Washington Park. We didn't consider it the hood because we thought we were doing pretty good. And so we accepted that. We all went to the same elementary school, the same high school. A lot of folks went to the same college. At that time, the colleges that you could go to were only black schools, either Howard, Virginia State, Virginia Union, Norfolk State, unless you left the state. And so when we entered the graduate schools, they had just passed the Civil Rights Bill. And so at that particular time, we had to apply, the blacks had to apply to go to a white school. It was called the Pupil Placement Board. And I can remember to this day when we received the letter that I had been accepted, because there were only 5 of us, I had been accepted to go to this white school. It was called Chandler Junior High School. And the letter came from the Pupil Placement Board. And we had been applying several times before, and this one says that you have been accepted to go to Chandler Junior High School. So this was the 7th grade. So when we went in there, it was myself and 4 ladies. And I couldn't protect the ladies. I could hardly protect myself. For an example, you go to shop class. The white people behind you, you're up there trying to do what you assigned to do, and a piece of wood would come and hit you in the back of the head. The white people were just mean. We'll be in history class. Every time they got to the word Negro, they would say niggers. And so I had to deal with that for 2 years. When we went to high school, it was John Marshall High School. It was still integrated, and we became more accepted because the athletes on the football team, it was called the Doc family. And some of you may have heard Raymond Doc and Bodine Doc. They both were professional athletes. So it was a Doc family. So every time on the radio, when and because we didn't have a whole lot of television coverage back then. Every time the radio would broadcast the game from the high school, they would say, those dark boys. I mean, it wasn't a racial thing. That was their last name. So we grew up with that. And that was where it all started. But during my childhood days, we were very privileged. We lived about 2 houses down from the church. So we stayed in the church. And that gave us some value. I mean, one of the worst whippings I got from my dad was for skipping Sunday school. Because the people would tell, the neighborhood was so close, that people would tell, your son was doing this, or your son was doing that, or your son didn't come to church. I remember every summer we would have a church excursion, and we would go to Buckrow Beach, because back then there weren't a lot of beaches. We couldn't go to Virginia Beach because it wasn't integrated. We had to go to Buckrow. And so I remember the church carrying us to Buckrow Beach. And I was maybe a teenager then, but one of the ladies who went with us, she was about my age, and we were sitting on the bus, and we were holding hands. By the time we got off the bus, someone had told my mom, y'all need to watch. My nickname was Pluggie, P-L-U-G-G-I-E. Now, where it came from, I have absolutely no idea. But anyway, when I got off the bus, the lady told my mom, you need to watch Pluggie because he seems kind of frisky. And so I had to deal with that, and I was probably frisky for a long time. So it's amazing. My biological mom was a beautician, and my stepmom was a beautician. When my dad met my stepmom, his later wife, he was a barber and beauty supply salesman. So he would go to all of the all the beauty shops and all the barber shops to sell products for them. And so my dad met my mom in a beauty parlor. And so they continued working in the beauty parlor and selling the supplies until they retired. And so they said they were going to have they were going to start 2 other groups. There were 300 at the time. They wanted 2 other groups, 300 each cast. So they were having a convention in Estes Park, Colorado. So I had to catch the bus out to Estes Park, Colorado, to be with all these other people who I didn't know. And for some reason, they decided I would be good to participate in the group. Keeping in mind now, I was 16 years old. So I joined the group. We had what we called a traveling high school, and we had college kids. Most of the kids were college kids. And so we were able to receive our correspondence courses from the University of Nebraska, which was accredited. All of our courses had to be accredited by a high school, original high school. And so we still could receive our diplomas from the high school where we were scheduled to graduate from. So after that, I continued to travel around the world with this group. We went to places, they opened up places and doors, and we met people. I mean, we performed at the White House. We performed in front of the Pope. We went all around the world, Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, South America, As it was a group, it was just a group, and as a matter of fact, that group is still going on today. They're not as large as it was back then. But the reason this group, the important thing, the reason this group was founded, because if you remember in 1965, that's when the war in Vietnam was going on. That's when all the race riots in 65 and 66 were happening, and everything coming from America was down with America. There was nothing positive coming from America. You had the hippies, you had the segregationists, you had all of these people, and we wanted to show that everybody in America wasn't down like that. It was a better country. So this group was called Up With People. And when you think about it, it's better than saying I'm down with anything. It's up with something. So that's how we got started with that group there. So anyway, when I left the group, we were college age and we were getting ready to get drafted back then. And so when I received my letter telling me to report to the induction center, I said, fine. I really didn't want to go to the military. Well, I wanted to go, but I wanted to do it on my terms and not be drafted. And I had two friends who I had grown up with who were killed in Vietnam. So that left a sour taste in my mouth. So when they told me to report, I reported, and they checked my weight, okay? And they said I was underweight. I think the weight may have been 130 or something back then. I can't remember. So what they did is put me up in a hotel in Richmond and made sure I ate. However, I outslicked them because I went home in the evenings when I was supposed to be in the hotel room eating and put a plastic bag around me and let the water run in the shower. And the steam would make you lose weight. So when I went back to be weighed again, I had lost 2 more pounds, and they could not believe I had lost 2 more pounds. So that's how I was able to not serve in the military the first time. The second time is because they were giving deferments because I was married and my wife was pregnant. So I got a deferment on that one. And that's how that situation went. But actually, I really wanted to serve in the military because my friends had gone. I thought it was a good choice, but I didn't want to be forced to join. At that particular time, I was going to Smith Madden Business College. I went to Smith Madden Business College for 2 years, and I worked at night at a place called Gillespie Photo Center, where we developed all the film. It was a big, like a Kodak plant. And they had put me in the dark room to develop the film. Now, my concern is that all the white people had the jobs outside in the light, but they had me in the dark room where I couldn't see. So I would always question that. And I'll never forget, this lady she was my supervisor. She was so nice to me. So now I'm getting married. I have a baby on the way. And the lady gave me her name was Louise Bailey. They gave me all like a baby shower, all kind of gifts. 3 weeks later, they told me that they asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I'd like to have a job that's not in the dark room. I can't see, Everyone else in the dark room was blind. The blind people, they did their thing, but I was the only one that they could see, and so I wanted a job outside of the dark room. And so she called me in and said, "Well, we don't have anything else for you, and so if apparently you're not happy, so you can leave now." And that was the first time I've ever been fired from a job. So, okay, after that and going through the business college, I received this information in the mail, and it was from Lemuel Airline Personnel School, which is right here, right now, still on Broadway in Kansas City. Okay, and so it was a 6-week course. I signed up for that course. Now, they promised to give you a job with the airline. Okay, but nobody from that school got a job with the airline. They were offering jobs at J.C. Penney's, Sears and Roebuck, nothing that had to do with the airline. So I was really disappointed because, and you can check on that Weaver school, it's still going on. I still check on that school. I was just aggravated. And so I moved to Washington, D.C. My wife and I were married in 1970. So I went to Washington, D.C. in about 1971 and started going around to all the airlines on my own, carrying my diploma from this Weaver Airline Personnel School, which people thought that doesn't mean anything because we train everyone anyway. So anyway, I got a job with National Airlines. It was called National at the time. They were based in, headquarters was Miami, but they had a place in Washington, D.C. So I started in Washington, D.C. with National Airlines, which later Pan Am bought. Okay, I was laid off from National for about 6 months, and I had a wife and a child, and I wanted to know what was I going to do to take care of my family. So at this particular time, United Airlines had asked me, their headquarters was in Chicago. They had asked me to come to Chicago for an interview for a flight attendant. And male flight attendants weren't that popular back then, especially black male flight attendants. So I really did not want to be a flight attendant. So I was still putting in applications. 1 week before I went to training, Delta Airlines invited me to come for an interview. Delta headquarters was in Atlanta, so they paid for us to come to Atlanta to get an interview. And Delta Airlines hired me then. They hired me as actually a cabin service cleaner to clean the aircraft. Then, back then, there was promotion to go from cabin service to the ramp. The ramp is all the ground activities, loading the bags, the cargo, things of that nature. So I did that. The biggest thing was, the next step for me was to become a ticket agent, because some of those bags weighed more than I weighed. I got tired of working out there with those bags in those conditions. So when I was asked to come to the ticket counter and sell tickets and work the gates and things like that, that was a joy. I mean, you go to work clean every day. You have a suit and tie on. You don't have to wear steel-toe shoes. I mean, that was something. So I did that. The next step was to become what we call a red coat. And if you're from the South, you know red coats. So that was a prestigious job, especially in Washington, D.C., because you had to interact with everyone on Capitol Hill. You know, Congress works, all of the congressmen and women, they worked Monday through Thursday. They leave on Thursday and go back to their district. They come back on Sunday, they work Monday. So we had to do all of this relationship building and coordinating and making things smooth with the Secret Service and things of that nature. So that was a great position to be in Washington, to handle all the dignitaries. After that, I was promoted to supervisor. So I was supervisor there. Then I wanted to come to Atlanta right before the Olympics, because the Olympics was coming in 1996. So this was in the early 90s. I wanted to be in Atlanta for the Olympics. And also, they were building a brand new airport. And that was an opportunity to grow. So I wanted to get to Atlanta. So I'll never forget, I went and talked to my my regional vice president at the time and told him, and I don't want this to come out wrong, but all the white people were getting promoted. So I went to my regional vice president and said, the way I see it, everyone who's getting the promotion is not a person who looks like me. None of them have mustaches, you know, and they all went to Georgia Tech. So this officer told me, well, I don't think there's nothing you can do about the color of your skin, okay? And you may or may not want to shave your mustache. Only thing I can tell you to do is move to Atlanta. And within 7 days, because that's what the man said I needed to do, within 7 days, I moved to Atlanta. My wife didn't want to move to Atlanta, so we commuted for a while. But that put me on the road to where I wanted to go. I asked for that information. The man was honest enough to tell me, There's nothing I can do but the color of my skin. There's nothing I can do about not going to Georgia Tech. So I needed to move to Atlanta. So I took that advice and I moved to Atlanta. When I met my wife is a few years younger than I am. Every year she would come. I was living in the city. She was from the country called Ashland, Virginia. I was living in the city of Richmond. So every year during the summer, you know how kids go and stay with the parents or the grandparents or relatives during the summer months. So my wife, her name is Diane. She came one summer, and at the park recreation park during the summertime where we used to jam all the time, she was there with her cousins and things of that nature. Now, I saw Diane, and she really caught my attention, but she was a lot younger than I was at the time. Well, she still is a lot younger, but she was a lot younger, and I was back then. You didn't want to be accused of robbing the cradle, all right? So I had to be cognizant of that. But anyway, we met. I mean, back then she gave me her phone number. We had met at the recreation center. She gave me her phone number, and we all had party lines back then. You could call and someone else be on the line, and you had to wait till they got off and things of that nature. Plus, she was the baby of nine kids, and they were all from the country, and they all loved to fight. And so I wasn't about fighting any of them. I mean, but they loved to fight. They were from the country. So Diane and I dated for a while. I remember I had a 1966 Ford Fairlane that my father had given me, and I put on some loud pipes. Now, keep in mind, the country people had those Mopars, those Dodge and Chargers and all of those things. I come up there with a Ford Fairlane, that wasn't going to get it. But I went to Models and put those pipes on, and that thing made a whole lot of noise, a Ford 289, but it couldn't run with a Road Runner or a GTX or anything like that. So it was, so we dated. It was about a 30-mile, she lived about 30 miles from me. And so once we did that, and then we had my daughter. Her name was LaShawn. She was born. We got married in April 1970. My daughter was born in September 1970, and so we at that particular time we moved in with my wife's mother. We stayed in a small house in the country, and after a while, she put us out. So we had to leave there. So then we went to live with my stepmom in Richmond. After a while, they put us out. Then I ended up going to Petersburg to stay with my biological mom. After a while, they put us out. And so a lot of people had put us out. I really don't know why, but we could not live in these places for so long. But after that, that's when I had to do something different. I had to leave Richmond. I had to find another place to live. I had my wife. I had a daughter, a small daughter. And so I said, hey, I had already traveled around the world with this singing group called Up With People, and I enjoyed traveling. So it put me into the travel industry. So that's when I went to Weaver Airline Personnel School and then got on with the airline. My wife did not want to leave. She didn't want to leave Washington. Then I was promoted to, I had to come to Atlanta. My wife she would not move to Atlanta. She wanted to stay in Washington. So we commuted for about 3 to 4 years or so. I'm in Atlanta, she's in Washington. And then I was promoted to a position in Richmond, Virginia. I thought my wife would be happy to move to Richmond, but she didn't want to leave Atlanta. Okay, so we commuted for another 3 or 4 years. Then I went back to Washington. My wife was still there. Then I was
You commuted 3 or 4 years
from.
you were in Atlanta for 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then she moved to Atlanta.
Then she moved to Atlanta, and then I was promoted and went back to Richmond. Now she doesn't want to leave Atlanta.
Okay.
Okay.
How long was she in Atlanta before you got promoted?
Maybe 2 years.
Okay.
And after that.
This is what year?
Oh. I would say I'm just going to say the late 80s, early 90s, because I can't remember.
LaShawn finished high school in 88, so it probably was like early 80s.
Yeah, it had to have been. I'm trying to think of when Sean finished high school. Chris, I'm be honest with you. I mean, so much time has. I mean, I know I went to LaShawn's graduation. The year she finished, that I can't remember. Well, she was in Atlanta.
Right.
So then she went to Riverwood.
Were you living in Atlanta then? Or
Yeah, no, I was living in Atlanta then.
Okay.
No, we moved. LaShawn moved to. I think LaShawn may have been.
9.
Was it 9? Okay, I was gonna say 5 or 6, but very well. LaShawn was very young.
That would have been like 79, 80.
That's why I said either the early 80s. Yeah, I mean, I moved to Atlanta the first time in 1979. Okay, and I was married then, and so LaShawn, I was commuting. Boy, Chris, you're gonna have to excuse me on this one because
no
I cannot remember. I can't remember how old Sean was. I knew Sean was in elementary school. That I do know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, no, I tell you what, it was before then because LaShawn was staying. When I moved to Atlanta, and we were living on Orly Terrace, LaShawn was still. She wasn't school age because she was staying with this lady named Leslie Brown. She was about 3 doors down from us. Mm-hmm. So, that's when Sean was, we didn't have all this child care and all this stuff like that. So LaShawn was staying with them. And then we put Sean in school when she became school age. So please don't ask me what year that was, because I can't recall all those years.
So you were commuting. You moved to Atlanta, and you got a promotion and went to Richmond. What were you doing in Richmond for Delta?
I was a station manager in Richmond, and to be honest with you, my wife didn't move with me up there. She didn't move to Richmond. We would commute. She didn't want to move back to Richmond, and I was shocked because that was our home, So I was really shocked that she wouldn't move with me to Richmond, but she didn't.
What was your social life like in Atlanta at the time? Were y'all hanging out?
Hey man, if you've ever been to Atlanta, Mr. V's and Cisco's, we were jamming back then, Chief. We had Freaknik, Atlanta was an awesome place, man. It's you saw, besides the social life, you saw people who looked like you excel and become executives with major companies. So to me, Atlanta was a melting pot and an opportunity place for African Americans. So I loved Atlanta, but yes, the social life, we jammed. I just leave it that way. We had this thing on Tuesdays. They had this club called Cisco's on Calendar Road. And on Tuesday night was airline night. So all the airline people, once we got off, whatever shift you were working, that's where we would go and socialize. On Wednesday night, it was about Mr. V's. It was airline night. And so everyone was catering to the airlines because Delta was the biggest business in town. You had Coca-Cola, and you had Georgia Power, but still Delta was still the biggest of those companies in the state of Georgia. And so we had a lot of accommodations and got in trouble a lot anyway. So it was all good. I mean, so, but that's how the social life was. I loved Atlanta. I love Washington D.C. You know, I love Richmond. Everywhere I've gone, I made the best out of it. Keeping in mind now, every time I move, my wife wouldn't move with me. You know, I mean, because she was set and she enjoyed the living style that we had where we were. So she didn't want to come back to Washington. She didn't want to go back to Richmond. She just, once we got to Atlanta, that was it. And that was kind of a hindrance because all of the white people who were moving up the ladder with Delta, their families would move all over all these hick towns and go everywhere. Every time they asked me for offered me a promotion, and I would never forget. They asked me if I would go and become the station manager in Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany, I think in Allentown, Pennsylvania. All these places were up north, where it's very, very cold. And I don't even know if they have black people up there. I know that they have black people up there, but that wasn't for me. However, in the professional world, if a company asks you to move, then if you didn't move, you were blackballed, you know, because they want you to show your loyalty to the company, and all the white people were moving. So I was at a disadvantage when I said no. And I thought I was going to be in Atlanta for the rest of my life, which was fine with me. You know, I mean, if I had reached the highest I was going to go, I could accept that because I wasn't going to move because I didn't mind moving, but my wife wasn't going to move. And so that's where all the commuting came in because she wouldn't move. But it worked out well in the end. So I right before the Olympics, like I said, I came back to Atlanta and they were building a new airport and all of that. And so that helped me also. But I was happy to be back with my wife because we had been separated commuting, I think, 6 or 7 years. Well, you know what? Before giving props to the integration, I have to give props to the group called Up With People, because in that group, it taught me different cultures, and we had traveled around the world. And I've never seen so many nice white people. So that taught me how to get along, and that proved to me that I could get along. And so that helped me more than integrating the schools. Integrating the schools wasn't a pleasant experience. Dealing with these people, you know, the Up With People folks, that was a pleasant experience, and plus we were entertaining.
So it's 2025 now, and President Donald Trump has just rolled back diversity, equity, and inclusion, and is trying to do away with it across the country. Having lived through integrating the school and now seeing that, what does that put in your mind? What does someone of your generation think?
Chris, for me, because if you know your history, Donald Trump at Trump Towers, when he bought that building, said a black would never live in that building. I think it was 1979. Then in the 80s, when the Central Park 5 people were accused of raping this girl in Central Park, Donald Trump said they need to have the electric chair. Now, when President Obama became president, right today, Donald Trump will not acknowledge that President Obama won the daggone election. So I don't want to get started on Donald Trump, to be honest with you, because I'm no fan of his. I think that where we're going to go is I mean, if you look at already, since the inauguration, the things that he's already done, cutting off things. No, he's not a fan for underprivileged people or disadvantaged individuals. He's not. It's about money. Look at the people who he put in his cabinet. Okay, these people have records for raping, bribery, fraud. A black person couldn't do that. We couldn't even get in the door with a record like his cabinet members have. So I don't want to go there because I'm passionate about this Donald Trump thing. And Donald Trump is the type of guy that sends somebody to my house.
So going back to Delta.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your position in 1996 leading up to the Olympics, and how was it working for the airline with all of the international traffic coming into Atlanta for the Olympics?
My position then was we called it a fourth level, and that's before becoming a manager. So I was in that position. The thing is, at this particular time when the Olympics came, I mean, we were all scrambling because it was a great event. So we were all scrambling. As a matter of fact, right before that, I was promoted to manager of airport customer service. And so we had to manage all the ticketing. It was above the wing. We had, at Delta, you have above the wing, which is passenger service, and below the wing, which is all the ramp operations. Below the wing, no personal, no public contact. I'll put it that way. And so when the Olympics came, we had to meet every week with the government officials, the security. Everything had to be just right. I mean, we were guided by the government officials to say what they needed, and it was up to us to make it happen. So it could be seamless travel and things like that. But the Olympics was a big deal when it came to Atlanta. Well, it's going to be a big deal when it goes anywhere, but back then, it was just an experience. That's the best I can say about it. Everything worked. Well, we did have one night when they had the guy they thought had a bomb or something, but other than that, it was for Delta. Being at Delta's headquarters, we had to shine. We had to pull out the red carpet for all the dignitaries. We had to shake plenty of hands. We had to be available. I mean, we provided them with cars, travel and things. I mean, it was a big deal, and Delta made it work. So
what kind of perks in your tenure at Delta?
What
kind of perks did you have? I mean, Atlanta's a bubbling city. Everybody wants to move to Atlanta. Music is popping. What kind of perks were you able to get
personally, or
just
socially?
Football games, socially.
Okay.
Just tell your great grandkids about the legacy of your perks.
Well, I really have been blessed. I've been to many Super Bowls. I've been able to carry my daughter and one of my grandkids to plenty basketball games. Sit in the VIP chairs or in the suites. We've been able to go to wherever the Super Bowl was. We were traveling to that Super Bowl, whatever city it was, all expenses paid, because it was about relationships. I've been to tennis matches. I've been to golf tournaments. It's just, there were a lot of perks. Besides that, being with an airline, the hotels, because of the travel industry, hotels would give us huge discounts on rooms and things like that. Restaurants would give us huge discounts, and so it was just something that came with working with Delta. But the other airlines employees had it also. American back then, Eastern, National Pan, but Atlanta was just so dominant for Delta. I mean, so it was.
So do you consider yourself blessed to be able to walk in all those rooms and everybody looks at Atlanta as the black mecca for America, and you were there from the beginning. You were able to watch it grow, and you had the keys to the city. Do you ever think about your life in that perspective?
Oh, without a doubt. Every day I thank the Lord for the life that I've had, and hopefully I'm an inspiration to some others. So without a doubt, I'm still involved in activities. I mean, I'm in mentoring program, several things that I believe that, I have been truly blessed beyond what I probably deserve. But I accept it, and I think I wear it well. But no, the things that I have done, Chris, for myself and for my family, is a lot of folks, I mean, don't have they haven't done that. I mean, when LaShawn, my daughter, was 4 years old, she was flying around the world in first class. Okay, people will walk by us and said, "Hi, we have never been in first class in our lives." These are, so no, I've been very blessed to be able to have a family and a support group. Even my son-in-law, I wanted my daughter to get married, but I didn't want her to move to Kansas City. But anyway, it's all good. I'm still blessed. So, leading up to my career after the Olympics in 1996, and that went along well. At that particular time, I was the general manager of Delta at the airport. Then I got promoted to director of airport customer service at headquarters. Now, I don't know if you've ever worked in a huge corporation at headquarters, but it's very political, and people are getting to work to see who can get to work the earliest and who can stay the latest and things of that nature. Everybody is vying for position. And so I did that. I didn't enjoy that. Then I was sent back to the airport right before the Olympics to run Atlanta operations there. After that, I was promoted. I was sent to Washington, D.C. as a station manager. I was sent to Washington, D.C. as a station manager. I was sent back to Atlanta as a station manager. And then I was promoted to vice president of airport customer service. Well, before being promoted to vice president, I was a regional director when I was responsible for 18 cities out west, from Birmingham, Jackson, Mississippi, New Orleans, Houston, all the way out to San Diego. So I was responsible for that territory. Then I came back to Atlanta. Now, keep in mind, when I was the regional director, I was on the road all the time. So I came back to Atlanta to run the operations here, and then it's just started growing. Actually, when I became vice president, they only had, for airport operations, they only had one vice president before me, and he had come from marketing, and he was very liked, and he had his hands on the pulse of the city, and everybody liked it. There was a marketing man. And so he left, and they went with ASA, which was Delta had purchased ASA. And so when he left, I was promoted to vice president. And so when I left there, the only reason I was leaving is because Delta was merging with Northwest. And a lot of the people in the time you merge with the company, the company that you purchase or merge with, they, you have to give up something to protect their people also. And so they were bringing in all these people with all of these, giving them positions and things of that nature. And I could see where the flow was going. Yes, I was happy. And I've never been the type of person to really want to get into leadership or anything like that. That wasn't my goal. I was real happy just selling tickets, smiling at the flight attendants, having my shoes shine, and walking around the airport. That was a fine job for me. But after people started getting all these promotions, and I was seeing how much money they were making, then I said, then why not me? So that's when I started becoming aggressive. Plus, I wanted to know, like I had told the vice president, if I'm not white, how am I going to get promoted? And he told me, and so that's the only reason I really and I started falling into things because I could deliver. Now, why me? I don't know, because coming back to Atlanta, there were a lot of people of color in Atlanta who were certainly qualified. They were certainly, they had gone to Morehouse, the ladies had gone to Spelman. These folks were very highly educated individuals from very good families, and so why I came in and, was favored, I have no idea. But I tell you, a lot of blacks from Atlanta regretted the fact that I was becoming their boss, and I was an outsider, is the way they looked at it. And so I had more support from the white people than I had from the black people. Chris, this is going to be way before your time. They used to have this program on television called Route 66. Okay, there were the two white guys in a Corvette, and it was back in 1966. All right, they're riding all across the country with the tops down and pulling all the ladies, and it was a cool car. So my goal at that time was to get me, when I was able to get me a Corvette. So I bought my first Corvette in 1972. Okay, then I bought a Corvette in 1978. Then I bought a Corvette in 1981. Then I bought a Corvette in 1995. Then I bought a Corvette in 20. The C6, I'm trying to think of the C6, was the 50th anniversary. Then a year ago, I bought my wife a 2023 Corvette. So I've had about 8 Corvettes in my life. It's just a nice, in my opinion, it's the best American-made sports car.
Have you ever driven you yourself, once you got your first Corvette, have you ever had another car? I know your wife has had other cars. Have you had a car outside of a Corvette?
Yes. The first car I had was this the 66 Ford Fairlane that my daddy gave me. Okay. Then after I moved to Washington, I gave that to my younger brother, and I bought it wasn't a Grand Prix. God, I forgot what you call those. It was a Pontiac, a long tail Pontiac, and I had that when I got married. I'm trying to think of it up in Pontiac back then. I just can't remember. But after that Pontiac, all I've had was the 66 Ford Fairlane, Pontiac, and then Corvettes. Yeah, so, but Corvettes they're good cars. When I had my first Corvette, I used to see other people riding in Corvettes, and in Washington, they used to gather on Sundays, and they have all these Corvettes, most of the white people, and they had all these always. And I said, I'm gonna do something with this Corvette. So I was in Washington at the time. So when I moved to Atlanta, I was at a gas station one day, and I ran across a black guy with a Corvette, and he said, "Man, you need to come to a club meeting." And I didn't know anything about a social club then, and so I was a car club. And so they asked, so I went, and there were very, very successful people with these Corvettes, and so I joined them. Then they broke up. A lot of times when you have these organizations, especially car clubs, I don't know about the other organizations, they split off. People get mad, or people are upset, or people want to run things differently. So they broke away. And so then I joined another Corvette club. It was called Unique Corvette. And so I was with them maybe 6-7 years or so. And so I got tired of some of the foolishness that was going on with them. And I think my problem was, Chris, I was too business minded to be it wasn't just about the car. If you're going to spend your time, make your time worth something without the car. I mean, my thing is the car may have brought us together, but the character of the individuals in the club would keep us together. And I didn't like some of the characteristics, and they probably didn't like me, so it could have been a two-way street. So I told, and Diane had joined, my wife had joined the club also. And so, so we were, I became the president of the club, and she was the treasurer. And so we were rocking along, But at some point, I was getting frustrated that we weren't moving far enough around. And I was accused of being too business-like, I'll be honest, and I probably was. And so I told Diane I was going to quit the club. And so Diane said, well, if you leave, I will leave. So I said, well, Diane, at that particular time, we had about 5 Corvettes, man. I said, we can start our own club. We don't need to be. And so once we left and we called the club, just Diane and I now, we were in a club called, we were first in Atlanta Corvette Society, then Unique. And then I said, well, Diane, we'll call our club Too Unique. It's just 2 of us. Okay. And so that's where our name came from. Well, once Diane and I got out, about 12 other people wanted to follow us. And we had no intentions of doing another club because you have to go to club meetings, you have to pay dues, you have to do this. That was not on our agenda. And so, but anyway, when the people started to come in, so we started another club. All right. And so Too Unique went along. I was the president of Too Unique. Then there's a organization called the International Council of Corvette Clubs that's nationwide. Okay. I was the vice president of that organization for 4 years. Then I got fed up with them. So, and it may just be me, but it's, so anyway, we still.
What kind of events did y'all do?
Mostly car show, the international.
Too Unique and international.
International, the first black director, as you know, the Corvettes are made in Bowling Green, Kentucky. That's where the Corvettes are made. That's the home of the Corvette. They have a museum there. All right. The first black plant manager they had there, his name was Will Cooksey. Okay. And so Will Cooksey was in our club in Atlanta because he was from Atlanta. Okay. He got promoted up to Bowling Green. And so we had a connection. So we would go up there to the plant and watch the cars getting assembled on the assembly line. So that gave us some clout and it gave us an understanding. So we met a lot of other people, and so once we got this international group, we had people from all over the United States with Corvettes. The Corvettes, in my opinion, is a Corvette owner is a different type of car owner because it's so easy to fellowship with another Corvette owner. You have something you can talk about. If you're driving down the street in a Cadillac, I don't think you're going to make it a conversation about your Cadillac. You may, I don't know. But the Corvette, because it's just a unique car and it takes a different kind of person to be in the Corvette. And so when you go to conventions all over the country, and you see hundreds of black people in Corvettes, it's amazing. As Too Unique, we had to be careful because there was a different mindset. Some people wanted to have the mindset of a social club, and some people wanted to have the personality of a car club. So you had to make a blend. But during this time, in order for us to attend a lot of the events that across the country that we wanted to attend, we had to have fundraising because everyone could not afford, the car and the insurance and the travel and the hotel and the expenses like that. So we said, how can we help each other to so everyone can participate? Okay, we're collecting dues, but what are the people getting for their dues besides saying they're in the club? So we said, how do we expand this thing and get more exposure? And there were clubs. I mean, there were clubs all over the country anyway. I mean, we would go to, we have Tyler, Texas. Now, who in the heck want to drive a Corvette to Tyler, Texas? We have driven to Tyler, Texas, Freeport, Louisiana, a lot of different places. So all of these people started getting together. Now, the main thing is that Will Cooksey, who was the plant manager at Bowling Green at the Corvette plant, he was the president of this international council. He started it, okay? Most of the people in the club at that time, especially in Atlanta, worked for General Motors. General Motors had a big plant there in Atlanta. And so most of the people were, they could get the cars at a discount. So that's really how it started. Will Cooksey was the father of these Corvette clubs. And so Will is still living. He still lives in Bowling Green, Kentucky. When I was growing up, and of course we didn't have a whole lot of televisions, and the TVs weren't in color. But our parents, they were big into the civil rights movement. So the Washington Redskins were the very last team to integrate. The owner of Washington said they will never have a black person on that team. Now, that's before my time. So my parents remember that. And so they said, after a while, if you didn't like the Redskins, what they were called then you had to go with the Cowboys. So it was Cowboys and Indians. So you had the choice that you could make, Cowboys or Indians. So my parents decided to go with the Cowboys. And so our household, even today, all of my brothers and my brother and my sister, we're all Cowboy fans. So we've been diehard fans ever since we were very, very young. So I still love the Cowboys. I'm not saying I'm happy with the organization, but I am happy with the brand that the Cowboys bring.
When did you first go to a Cowboys game on Thanksgiving?
And
how many you think you've been to?
I think, Chris, I can't remember. It had to have been like about 1996, after the Olympics, that I was invited. I'll tell you where the invitations were coming from. The airlines at the time had relationships with vendors. Okay, so we had relationships with the people who put the food on the plane. We had relationships with people who put the water on the plane. We had relationships with people who washed the planes. Okay, and so being in a position of managing these relationships with these contractors, they would invite me to all these events. So I would say since about 1996, I was going every year. I went 8 years without my wife because it was a business thing for these other people. All right. I kept my wife 1 year, and she's been going with me ever since. I'll just leave it there. So, but no, the Super Bowl games are still great. This is going to be one that for a long time that we probably won't go to New Orleans. I mean, now I think Kansas City is going to be there. I think Kansas City will be there, and I may change my mind. But most of my trips to the Super Bowls, I was the guest of another company. Okay, now in Atlanta, I had access to the Delta Suite to go to Atlanta games. But for the Super Bowl, there's a whole different ball. Yeah, it's just different, and the criteria is different to get tickets. So. You know what? I'm very proud of that, to be honest with you. And I think the relationship is important. I want to, hopefully, I'm here long enough to enjoy all of the success that they will have, because I'm comfortable they will succeed. I'm just, it's just a different feeling when you see your bloodline at that level, especially you appreciate it more when you're getting up here, you know, and your days on earth may be numbered, but you forge your relationship with the grandkids. So I think it's very, I mean, even the great grandkids, while they are so young, they're still very precious because I want them to continue, you know, I want them to remember us. All of our grandkids have been to Atlanta and have stayed with us, you know, several times. So hopefully I am able to say, hey, they remember me. I hope they will.
So, your one daughter
Mm-hmm.
tells you she's getting married and moves to Kansas City. How does that play out?
Well, that's two questions in one. The thing is, yes, am I excited she's getting married? Heck yeah. Great. Got a great guy. Go for it. Am I happy she's moving to Kansas City? Absolutely not. And I tell you, it softened the blow because I could fly to Kansas City for free. Okay. If I couldn't, I wouldn't have a relationship because I couldn't afford to come up here, you know, and I didn't want to put a burden on other people to try to come back and see us. And so that's why now I'm just glad that I've seen the grandkids, you know, grow and will continue to grow. The great grandkids also. So, but it was, the marriage part wasn't a problem. That was exciting. The moving part, I had a problem with that, and I didn't know. I was in Kansas City, as I told you earlier, for the airline personnel school, but I was young then. But for her to say she's moving to Kansas City, ooh-wee, yeah.
So how does it feel watching the Kansas City Chiefs? I mean, you knew the Kansas City Chiefs when they wasn't on nobody's radar, and now this the seventh AFC championship.
Yeah. I would tell you, my first exposure with Kansas City Chiefs, if you remember, it was a lineman named black guy, Willie Lanier. Willie Lanier went to Virginia Union University in Richmond, Virginia. And so every time Kansas City came on back then, and it wasn't that frequent because we were in the Redskins market, you know, we would look for Willie Lanier. I mean, like he was our family member because we were so proud of him. And so then those days went by. And then, you know, I started watching the Cowboys more because Kansas City still wasn't coming on national television every week like the Cowboys were, you know. But after my my daughter and my son-in-law and my grandkids all live in Kansas City, Kansas City is my second team. I never had two teams. I still love the Cowboys, but I can have an NFC team and an AFC team. As far as because I don't know how much longer my great-grandkids, I'm going to be here with them. I hope a long time, you know. But I would want them to know that I was a caring grandfather, a great-grandfather. I was a family man. I was a loving man, you know. And I was just a very decent human being, you know. I love my grandkids. I just think it's remarkable that I've been able to see my grandkids and my grandkids do well, you know, from grandkids in Morehouse to the ones who are going to Morehouse to the ones who ever go wherever they choose to go. I'm just so proud of all my grandkids. And I just want to be there to support them. And one day, you know, I mean, I want them to have memories that that's a great grandfather.